I'm going to show you how to change the alternator in your 2001 Volkswagen Beetle. It's very, very simple. I kid you not. This was the easiest thing I could have done because I couldn't find a simple, straightforward video on it that showed, besides removing it, there's not many videos that either include removing it or installing it. So, in this video, I'm going to show you how to remove, install, and then turn over the car again, and maybe a battery replacement along the way. But this Volkswagen Beetle has been sitting inside of my driveway for probably, say, the last 2 years, untouched, unmoved. In order to get it working again, I just decided, why not see what was wrong? Found it wasn't getting adequate power. So I bought a new battery. Battery died within 20 minutes of it running. And I mean just idling. So the car shut off on me. Took the voltmeter to it. Noticed that I was not getting any return amperage. The alternator was to be tested. Tested the alternator. It was not producing 14.4 volts. And in the end, I decided to replace it. Come to find out, that was my only problem. Now I have a Volkswagen Beetle that works. Really, all you need is a 15mm open-end wrench or a crescent wrench, something to Allen key or something small like a pick to stick through the little pulley mechanism, and you might hear me say that in the video, and then a 13mm short socket and a 13mm long socket and a pry bar. Those are pretty much all you need. This is pretty easy. We're going to get to the alternator, we're going to put it in, and let's get to it.
I'm going to start by removing the dipstick from the car and the engine cover. The engine cover comes up and you just pop it off the little rubber grommets that hold it into place, and it's pretty straightforward and easy. I'm going to use the 15mm open-end wrench and an Allen key to hold the tensioner in place, relieve the pressure so I can get the drive belt off, or the serpentine belt, however it is that you say, because I need to remove the tensioner pulley. Now with the belt out, I'm going to remove the three 13mm bolts that hold the tensioner pulley into place so I can carefully remove the tensioner pulley from the vehicle and set it aside. As you can see, the tensioner pulley just fell right out and onto my hands, and I'm just going to simply pull that right out and set it aside.
The tensioner. One at the bottom. There's one at the bottom and one at the top.
So the two bolts that you just saw, those are as well 13mm bolts, and they hold the alternator into place. Simply remove them and set them aside so you can pry the alternator from the engine.
Got the electrical connector.
Simply note, by the way I'm prying against the engine itself and not that black bracket, because you do have a chance of bending that black bracket, and those three bolts that you pulled from the tensioner, you have to get those three bolts through the bracket to get the tensioner into place. And if you bend it, you're going to have a hard time bending it back. So just note, you want to be careful where you're prying.
Last two is the electrical connectors. We got a little 8mm right there, and the ground.
So I simply loosened up that 8mm bolt that held the little bracket into place and used a flathead screwdriver, because it is cold outside, so I don't want to use my hands, to remove the bracket and slide off the pin. The 13mm ground bolt will loosen up and you can pop that ground strap right off.
Ooh, yeah.
With a little bit of simple finagling to remove the alternator, I just packed it up for the day because I had to go to the scrapyard and get another alternator. So at least I had the part out, it's prepped, and I'm ready to put the new part in when it comes. So when putting in the new alternator, it is easier to put it in than it is to take it out. Less steps. Now, I decided to put the electrical connectors back on before I bolted it down because I don't want to work with weird angles trying to get that little 8mm bracket on there, and yeah, I just don't want to do that. So I put it on first. When reinstalling the bolts to the alternator, those two little sliding pins at the other side of the alternator, those work as like a clamping style. So what it does is as you're tightening, it'll clamp the alternator to the block to ensure that it doesn't move during operation. Just make sure you don't over tighten those because you don't want to have to deal with it when it's over tightened. So just keep that in mind. Reinstalling the tensioner pulley back into the car, you want to be sure that you did not, and I mean did not, bend the bracket. Because last thing you wanted to do is to pry against that metal black bracket and bend it, or else everything will go back in very smoothly. And you want to make sure that these do not get over tightened because you are putting them into an aluminum block, and the last thing you want is for them to be over tightened to the point where not only will you easily strip out the hole, it's just you don't want to over tighten them. Putting the drive belt on might take you a little extra time if you've never done it before, but in this case it took me about 3 minutes. I showed a diagram on what my car looks like and my drive belt pattern. You want to make sure that all the grooves are seated onto all the pulleys before you start the motor. Now you're able to remove the Allen key that was holding the tensioner using that 15mm open-end wrench and put tension on the belt. So I originally removed the battery from the car because I'm working with electrical circuits on cars. Some techs don't do that, but just as a safe precaution and a good force of habit, I just decided to remove the battery from the car so I don't short circuit or tap anything or anything touches. Last thing I want is to have the electrical connectors on the car or any electrical circuits get destroyed during the process. Both of these little clamps that hold the positive and the negative battery terminals on, those are both 10mm bolts. So I just ought to throw that in. Now, to ensure that everything works, I verified that everything's plugged in. I went through and checked it over. I put the battery in, and now I turned over the car and verified that the car turns over and it'll run. I took my digital voltmeter and checked to see what voltage I'm getting. I was getting 14.4 volts coming off the alternator to the battery, and so I can put the engine cover back on by pushing it down and send it off.
I hope you enjoyed watching it, the video, because I tried filming with like a GoPro to give like a different perspective, because this camera mounted on a tripod pointing face down is kind of difficult to show when you're dealing with an engine bay because of all the different movement and configurations. I've had to show that before and I've always had trouble with it, so I just decided to borrow a GoPro and show it that way. And hopefully that showed all the angles that needed to be, because it was kind of hard to see at times. I do hope that this helps somebody aid in doing an R&R on your alternator. Also, I hope that it helps somebody as a reference point to see how to do an alternator on a 2001 Volkswagen Beetle 2.0. And I do hope to be bringing back more videos just because of the whole YouTube problems and all that. Then we have what I'm doing, and then we've got everything in between. Maybe I might make some more vlogs. I do definitely want to show how to do an R&R on a old disposable camera because, well, hence the name disposable camera. Why not make them more efficient? So I'm going to try and redo this disposable camera so I can use it again. Instead of making it disposable, why not make it a little more eco-friendly to the environment and reuse them? I hope this video helps somebody. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to check out my channel. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and smash the subscribe button for me. And hopefully I'll be up with another video soon. So